The title of our study is Effectiveness of Using the Scavenger Hunt Program in Establishing Arbitrary Relations in Children by Lauren Lang, Rachel Minkle, Mary Kate Shaughnessy, and Megan Tolan. The Peak Transformation Module is a curriculum designed to develop the relational repertoire of individuals without developmental disabilities. The purpose of the current investigation was to demonstrate the efficacy of a program from the Peak-T module in establishing complex arbitrary relations across 3 children. Entailment probes across each of the participants showed derived combinatorial entailment across 5 relational stimulus classes, and a transformation of stimulus functions in a novel context was also demonstrated. The results are discussed consistent with relational frame theory account of human language and cognition. RFT is an attempt to explain various aspects of complex human behavior, including language, deductive reasoning, and perspective. It includes 3 main terms: mutual entailment, combinatorial entailment, and transformation of stimulus. Mutual entailment refers to a relation between 2 events in relation to 1 event. For example, train A is larger than train B. We can derive that train B is smaller than train A. Combinatorial entailment refers to 2 or more relations mutually combined. For example, train A is faster than train B, and train B is faster than train C. We can derive that train A is faster than C, and that train C is slower than train A. Transformation of stimulus functions is when a given stimulus alters functions in other networks. For example, train A is better than train B, and train B is better than train C. In RFT, we focus on 2 types of responding. First, in non-arbitrary relations, this means that stimuli are related solely based on their physical characteristics. Arbitrary apical responding, however, focuses on stimuli that are related independently of their physical characteristics. In this study, we will be focusing on NAAR. In our study, we'll be focusing on the Peak-T. Peak-T stands for Peak Transformation Module, which focuses on learning relations between stimuli. It is the 4th learning module in the series. The purpose of our study was to administer the Peak-T to our participants and to evaluate whether or not it was effective in increasing their ability to exhibit combinatorial entailment across 5 stimulus classes, and a transformation of stimulus functions across all 3 participants. There have been studies conducted within the last few years that indicate the Peak is effective in increasing language learning. We wanted to expand upon this current knowledge and determine if Peak-T was effective in increasing our participants' language repertoire as well. The participants in our study were 3 male children between the ages of 13 and 17 diagnosed with developmental disabilities. The setting was in a lunchroom, and the Peak was administered at a folding table located within this lunchroom. The materials used within our study were the Peak-T module, note cards, arbitrary objects such as pens, balls, paper clips, and beads. IOA was calculated by taking the number of scored agreements divided by the agreements plus disagreements and multiplied by 100. IOA was 100% across all the trials that were conducted. We used a multiple baseline across participants to determine the effectiveness of a transformation relation of A to B, B to C, C to A, and Y to Z. For each of the participants, sessions began at different times. The first relational frame was introduced to Ryan, participant 1, when his base levels were stable. The intervention was then implemented for Kevin when his baseline levels for each of the steps were stable. Finally, the intervention was introduced to Bob when his baseline levels for all of the steps were also stable. By implementing the relational frames at different times for each participant, it can be concluded that different relational frames are responsible for any changes in the participant's behavior. Before we began the experiment, researchers first conducted an indirect assessment of each participant to help indicate what skills that participant had to help determine which Peak module should be used. After we reviewed the results, it was determined that Peak-T Program 12V would be most beneficial. In this program, the goal is to have the participants be provided a selected stimuli. Then select the number from an array, which was B, and then equivalence A to B. When the participant is provided a sample number B, and to select an arbitrary symbol from an array C, which is then B to C. The participants will then be able to find the same number of items in a scavenger hunt, Z, which provided the arbitrary symbol Y, which equivalents to Y to Z. As you can see in Figure 1, low peak scores were observed in each of the baseline conditions across steps 1 through 3. Baseline patterns of responding were stable throughout the phases. None of the participants were able to provide correct responding for the A to B relation, B to C relation, and C to A relation. Baseline for the Y to Z relation observed high peak scores across participants. What this demonstrates is mastery of previously trained relations. During each treatment phase, there was an increase in peak scores. Ryan's overall mean percentage of peak scores for steps 1 through 3 increased to 97.9% accuracy. Kevin's overall mean percentage increased to 97.9%. And the last participant, Bob's overall mean percentage increased to 96.1% accuracy. These results demonstrate mastery of the A to B, B to C, and C to A relations. In Figure 2, this graph shows the percent of independent responses given by each participant. These responses were given without feedback or access to reinforcing item. Ryan's mean of independent responses for the A to B phase was 97.5%, 95% for the B to C phase, 96.6% for the C to A phase, and 92.5% for the Y to Z relation. Kevin's means of independent responses for the A to B phase was 100%, 92.5% for the B to C phase, and C to A and Y to Z were both 100%. The average of independent responses for Bob for all relations was 96.6%. This data suggests that all participants were able to demonstrate a transfer of stimulus function after each of the steps had been mastered by the participants, without a reinforcer, multiple prompts, or feedback. Our current study shows that the PEAK is an effective curriculum in developing relational repertoires of individuals with disabilities. Participants were able to demonstrate simple arbitrary relations from a Level 3 PEAK-T program. Data supports our hypothesis. The PEAK-T scavenger hunt program would increase the client's ability to exhibit combinatorial entailment across 5 relational stimulus classes and a transformation of stimulus function in a novel context across all 3 participants. Our results suggest that the PEAK-T is effective in increasing the learning abilities of male children with developmental disabilities. Our study adds to a growing number of research on PEAK. A study conducted in 2015 found that PEAK was effective in significantly increasing the language repertoire of individuals with autism. In another similar study, participants that were trained using PEAK demonstrated a transfer of stimulus function to untrained stimuli after training was completed. There were a few limitations within our study. First, all of the participants were male. In order to ensure generalization of our research, future studies should include both male and females as participants. Second, the entire study was conducted in one setting. Future research should also include the study across multiple settings. Third, the participants were not randomly assigned, which may cause a threat to internal validity. Fourth, the participants were not typically developing. In order to make sure that our research can extend across multiple populations, different ability types should be included in future research. Future research should also include the impact that the entire learning series has on an individual's language repertoire. Most current studies focus on the impact that a specific module has on learning, but it would be interesting to see the impact that the entire series could possibly have on an individual. Here are our references for the paper.